The glass used to be soil. That was the first thing Admiral Sarah Voss thought when she stepped off the shuttle onto what remained of Calder's Rest. Not the smell, though it was terrible. Not the silence, though it pressed against her ears like deep water. It was the ground under her boots, fused, smooth, still faintly reflective, that told her everything. Soil did not become glass on its own. Something had to burn it from above, long and slow and hot, until the earth itself gave up and melted. For days ago, this had been a colony of 600,000 people. She walked without speaking. Her aide, a young officer named Bren, followed 2 steps behind and said nothing. There was nothing to say. The city had not been bombed in any conventional sense. There were no craters, no scattered debris, no broken walls still standing. The Vrethkai had used orbital heat lances. Sustained beams dragged slowly across the surface in overlapping passes until everything above the bedrock was reduced to nothing. The trees, the buildings, the streets, the people. All of it gone. All of it glass. Calder's Rest was the 5th world. 7 had been hit in total, across 72 hours. Sarah had read the numbers on the flight over. For billion, 300 million people. The figure was too large to hold in the mind all at once, so she stopped trying. She just walked. A recovery team was working the eastern edge of what had been the capital. They were not finding survivors. They were recording, taking samples, logging coordinates for a memorial that someone, somewhere, had already begun planning. Sarah watched them for a moment and then looked up at the sky instead. It was pale orange with suspended ash. Beautiful almost. Wrong. Her communicator buzzed. It was Director Rail Osman, calling from Earth. She answered without pleasantries. The Vrethkai broadcast again, Osman said. His voice was flat, the way it always was when he was controlling something. Same message. They've designated humanity as a Category 4 infestation under Dominion expansion doctrine. The 7 worlds were what they call administrative clearances. They're offering to halt further action if the United Earth Council formally acknowledges Dominion priority over the outer reach sectors. Sarah looked down at the glass ground. And the Council? She asked. Split. Holt's faction wants to open dialogue. They're calling it de-escalation. De-escalation, she repeated. Sarah, I heard you. She ended the call and stood there a moment longer. Somewhere beneath the glass, 600,000 people were still there, compressed into the earth like fossils forming in fast forward. She thought about the farmer who had probably stood on this ground the morning of the attack, the child who had been walking to school, the old man feeding birds outside his front door. None of them had known what was coming. None of them had been given a reason, because the Vrethkai did not believe an infestation required a reason. She walked back to the shuttle. On the flight back to the US Endurance, she read the full Vrethkai broadcast transcript. It was not angry. It was not hateful or emotional in any way she could recognize. It was administrative, formal, the same tone as a land survey or a tax document. Humanity had been categorized, assessed, and scheduled for removal. The 7 worlds were described as Phase 1 site preparation. There was, clearly, a Phase 2. Fleet Commander Nira Solano met her at the hangar bay. Solano had grown up on Brennan's world, one of the 7. Her family was gone. She had not cried, as far as Sarah knew. She had not slept either. Orders? Solano asked. I've been recalled to Earth, Sarah said. Council briefing. You have the fleet until I'm back. And if the Vrethkai move while you're gone? They won't. They're waiting to see if we flinch. Solano said nothing to that. They both understood what it meant. The journey to Earth took 18 hours. Sarah spent most of it reading colony records, population logs, school enrollment numbers, agricultural output reports from worlds that no longer existed. She read them the way someone reads a letter from a person who has died, slowly, looking for the life in the data. By the time she entered the council chamber on Earth, she had not slept in 30 hours. She stood before 47 counselors in their tiered seats and waited for them to finish debating. When they finally turned to her, Counselor Holt spoke first. Admiral Voss, in your assessment, is there a diplomatic path here that does not cost us more lives? Sarah looked at him. He was not a coward. She knew that. He was a man trying to find a door that did not exist. No, she said. You're certain? Counselor, the Vrethkai did not attack us because of a disagreement. They did not attack us because of a border dispute or a resource claim or a cultural misunderstanding. They attacked us because they looked at 4 billion people and saw a problem to be managed. That is not a negotiating position. That is a category. You cannot diplomacy your way out of being someone's pest control target. Silence in the chamber. Holt leaned forward. Then what are you recommending? Sarah had already decided before she walked through the door. She had decided on the glass ground of Calder's Rest, standing over the compressed remains of 600,000 people who never got to have this conversation. I'm not recommending anything yet, she said. I'm telling you first, there is no negotiation. What comes after that is a decision we make together. The chamber stayed quiet. Outside, ash from 7 burned worlds was still traveling through space, spreading outward in slow rings, silent, invisible. Humanity had not answered yet. It was about to. The file had no official name. In the Earth Command System, it existed as a budget line, Research Initiative 7G, designated inactive, last audited 11 years ago. It had survived through bureaucratic invisibility, too small to notice, too classified to question, sitting quietly in the deep storage of Titan Station like a stone at the bottom of a cold lake. Director Rael Osman unlocked it the same night Sarah returned from the council chamber. He did not brief her in any official room. He took her to a side corridor on Sublevel 9 of Earth Command, handed her a data pad, and waited while she read. He did not explain. He let the document do it. Sarah read for 4 minutes without speaking. Project Hollowpoint. 22 years of quiet development. Antimatter cascade charges, designed for delivery via long-range drone platforms. Upon detonation in proximity to a mid-sequence star, the cascade would trigger runaway fusion escalation. Irreversible, self-sustaining. The star would expand and destabilize within 72 hours. Any world in the inner system would be uninhabitable within a week. Any world in the outer system would follow within a year. In plain language, humanity had built something that could kill suns. Who approved this? Sarah said. It was not a question. 3 administrations ago. Quietly. Off the main budget. Osman folded his hands. The logic at the time was deterrence. Something so severe that no civilization would dare move against us if they knew it existed. But no one knows it exists. Correct. That was also intentional. A weapon you reveal becomes a political problem. A weapon you keep hidden stays an option. Sarah set the pad down. How many charges? 41 functional units. Enough to cover every primary star system in Vrethkai core space. She was quiet for a long moment. The corridor hummed with ventilation. Somewhere above them, the council was still debating. Somewhere beyond the solar system, the Vrethkai fleet was still waiting. You've had this for 22 years, she said. And you never used it. We never needed to, Osmond said. Until now we were never categorized as an infestation. Sarah picked up the pad again and looked at the weapon schematics without really seeing them. She was thinking about something else. She was thinking about the document she had read on the flight home. A school enrollment report from Calder's Rest, 312 children registered for the new academic year. A year that never came. I need targeting data, she said. Full star charts of Vrethkai core systems. All 13. Osman nodded as if he had expected this. I have someone for that. Fleet Commander Nira Solano had not been assigned the mission officially. She had asked for it. Osman had agreed before Sarah even returned to Earth, which told Sarah everything she needed to know about how long he had been planning this. Solano took a 2-ship recon team through a gap in the Vrethkai sensor net near the border system of Drell 4. The gap had been mapped 6 months ago by a probe no one had officially sent. Osman's people again. The intelligence apparatus of Earth had been preparing quietly for a long time, it seemed. Longer than Sarah had known. The Vrethkai logistics station at Veth Minor was vast, the size of a small moon, processing supply chains for border operations. Solano's team docked using a stolen Vrethkai freight signature and spent 9 hours inside. What Solano brought back was not just star charts. She brought recordings. In the administration wing of Veth Minor, she had found the operational archive for the 7 colony world attacks. She had copied the files. Back aboard the Endurance, Sarah sat alone and watched a Vrethkai logistics officer spend 40 minutes filing the destruction of 7 human worlds. He worked at a desk. He had a cup of something warm beside him. He pulled up each world in sequence, entered coordinates, entered date of clearance, entered estimated biomass reduction, and moved on to the next. The entry for Calder's Rest took less than 2 minutes. When he was finished, he closed the file and went to lunch. Sarah watched that last part 3 times. She went to find Counselor Holt that evening. He was in his temporary office on Sublevel 4, preparing a speech about measured responses and the long history of diplomatic resolution. He looked up when she entered and started to speak. She put the recording on his desk and pressed play. He watched it in silence. By the end, his face was still, but something behind his eyes had changed. Some last argument he had been holding on to had dissolved. Even now, she said, I'm not asking you to want this. I'm asking you to understand what we are dealing with. Holt looked at the paused image of the Vrethkai officer's empty desk. Do what you need to do, he said quietly. Sarah sent authorization for Hollowpoint retrieval from Titan that night. The charges would be transported under maximum security to Rally Point Goliath. The fleet would be waiting. She stood outside in the cold air afterward, looking up at a sky full of stars. Somewhere in that darkness were 13 star systems, each one burning steadily, each one unaware of the decision that had just been made in a sublevel office on a pale blue planet. 22 years humanity had kept that secret in the ground. Now they were going to dig it up. No one had seen a fleet like it. Not in recorded history. Not in any war game or simulation run by Earth Command. 4,217 vessels assembled in the dark at Rally Point Goliath, a coordinate so far from any shipping lane that it existed only in classified navigation charts. The ships held their positions without running lights. From a distance, they would have looked like a field of dead stars, cold, quiet, unmoving. Up close, they were something else entirely. Sarah moved through them aboard a small inspection shuttle, not because she needed to see every ship, but because she needed to feel the scale of what had been built. The Titan-class dreadnoughts were the largest warships humanity had ever launched, 3 of them, each one longer than most cities, carrying enough firepower to crack a moon. They had been constructed in hidden orbital yards over the course of a decade. Their existence never entered into any public record. The galaxy had thought humanity was still developing second-generation jump drives. The galaxy had been looking in the wrong direction. Tomas Rhee was already aboard when Sarah returned to the Endurance. He was a journalist, 29 years old, born on Calder's Rest. He had been off-world when it burned, at a university 3 systems away, in the middle of an exam on interstellar media ethics. The irony was not lost on him. Sarah had read his work. He was honest, which made him dangerous in most situations and valuable in this one. He found her in the corridor outside the command deck. You're going to let me report this, he said. Not a question. I'm going to let you document it, Sarah said. There's a difference. You report what you see. You don't shape it. You don't protect us and you don't condemn us. You show it. And if what I show makes humanity look like the thing we're fighting, then that's what you show. He was quiet for a moment. Most commanders would never agree to that. Most commanders haven't stood on the glass ground of Calder's Rest, she said, and walked past him. She spent 3 hours that afternoon walking the troop carriers. The soldiers were young. Some of them were very young, 18, 19, barely past training. Many had grown up in the colony systems. They had cousins and parents and childhood friends in the casualty lists. They cleaned their equipment and played cards and talked too loud and went quiet when they thought about what was coming. One soldier, a woman named Dara, maybe 20 years old, stopped Sarah in a narrow corridor and asked her directly, Admiral, are we going to win? Sarah looked at her. Yes, she said. And after? Sarah thought about that for a moment. It was the better question. That depends on the choices we make while we're there, she said. She left before Dara could ask anything else. Ambassador Soth arrived by courier ship the following morning. He represented the Polhari Compact, a neutral civilization, observers rather than combatants, known for their long institutional memory. He was polite, careful with his words, and deeply uncomfortable. He met Sarah in the briefing room and got to his point quickly. What you are assembling here will frighten every civilization in this region, he said. Not just the Vrethkai. When this fleet moves, everyone will see it. Everyone will know what humans are capable of. Good, Sarah said. Soth paused. You intend that as a deterrent. I intend it as information. The galaxy didn't know we had this. Now it will. Civilizations that were thinking about whether humanity was an easy target will have new data to work with. And civilizations that were neutral? Friendly. They'll be fine, Sarah said. We're not the Vrethkai. We don't glass worlds because we've decided someone is an infestation. We have a specific reason for being here. She looked at him directly. Ambassador, I respect your concern. But nothing you say in this room changes what was done to 4 billion people. The Vrethkai made a decision. We are the consequence of that decision. Soph left without further argument. That evening, Sarah wrote no speeches. She sent no fleet-wide broadcast. She simply transmitted the jump order with a timestamp. Execute at 0300. Every captain on every ship knew what it meant. There was nothing to add. Tomas Rhee was on the command deck when the countdown reached 0. He had his recording equipment running. Sarah did not ask him to stop. At 0300, the jump drives engaged across the fleet. Not all at once. In sequence, ship by ship, like a long breath being drawn in the dark. Each vessel bent space around itself and vanished. The stars in that sector of space were briefly, almost imperceptibly, disturbed, the way a pond's surface moves when something large slides beneath it. 4,217 ships. Gone. Tomas lowered his recorder and stood in the suddenly quiet command deck of the Endurance. He had been documenting humanity for most of his adult life. He had never seen anything like this. He thought about his home, the glass, the ash. He kept recording. The Vrethkai defense fleet at Vethkal had never lost a battle. In 400 years of Dominion expansion, the border defense systems of Vethkal had broken 9 separate civilizations attempting to resist Vrethkai control. It was the most heavily fortified position outside of core space, layered defense platforms, automated gun rings, a standing fleet of over 900 warships, and a command architecture that could coordinate a response across the entire sector in under 3 minutes. When the human fleet arrived, it came from 9 directions at once. No warning, no declaration, no broadcast demanding surrender. The first the Vrethkai commanders at Vethkal knew about the assault was when their sensor network went dark, not damaged, not destroyed, simply blinded. Quantum relay jamming spread across the entire sector simultaneously, cutting their long-range communication in the same instant the first human ships opened fire. They had been fighting as 9 separate fleets. They joined into one the moment contact was made. Sarah watched the battle unfold from the Endurance's command deck with the calm of someone who had spent 20 years imagining exactly this scenario. The Vrethkai were not poor fighters. They were methodical, disciplined, and well-equipped. Their ships moved in coordinated formations that were elegant to watch, tight, efficient, built around the assumption that an enemy would fight in predictable patterns. Humanity did not fight in predictable patterns. Humanity had spent 2,000 years making war on itself. Every doctrine the Vrethkai used, humans had invented and then found a way to break. Every formation their ships held, some human commander in some forgotten war had already run into, adapted to, and defeated. The Vrethkai had never faced an enemy that fought like it had no rules, not because humans were savage, but because humans had already written every rule, learned when each one failed, and quietly kept notes. The gun platforms fell first, then the outer fleet ring. Then, over the course of 4 brutal hours, the interior defense line. Human ships took heavy damage. Some were destroyed entirely. Sarah watched the casualty reports scroll in and kept her face still. Fleet Commander Solano was already gone. Her vanguard team had jumped ahead of the main fleet toward the Vrethkai military command station at Kesavar Point. The station was the nerve center for Dominion military operations in the sector. Taking it would not end the war, but it would cut the head off the body. Tomas Rhee was recording everything from the secondary observation deck. He had stopped commenting into his recorder and was simply filming. The battle displays, the faces of the bridge crew, the casualty numbers climbing in the corner of the main screen. At one point, a young officer 2 consoles away began shaking and had to step back from his station. Tomas filmed that too. He did not look away. The Kesavar engagement was close. Solano's team breached the station under fire, fought through 7 levels of internal defense, and reached the command core in a little under 2 hours. Solano herself took a burn across her left arm in the last corridor. She did not stop. The Vrethkai commanders inside had not expected anyone to actually reach them. Their entire defensive doctrine assumed the station would never be boarded. They had been wrong. When Solano sent the all-clear signal, Sarah let out a slow breath she had not realized she was holding. The Battle of Vethkal lasted 6 hours and 40 minutes. At the end, the Vrethkai border defense was gone. The sector was open. The path to core space was clear. 3 hours later, a transmission arrived from the Vrethkai High Dominion. Sarah read it twice. The language was formal, precise, and completely detached from any acknowledgement of what had just happened. The Dominion offered to reclassify humanity's status under expansion doctrine from Category 4 infestation to Category 2 protected reserve. In practical terms, humans would be permitted to exist on a defined set of worlds under Dominion oversight, with restrictions on fleet development and interstellar expansion. The 7 destroyed colony worlds would be logged as a prior clearance event and considered settled. There would be no apology. There would be no reparations. They were offering a cage. "Continue advance," she said. Bren hesitated. "Admiral, the transmission." I read it. She did not look up from the map. "Continue advance." Tomas lowered his recorder. He had filmed her face in the moment she read the transmission. He had filmed the moment she set it aside. He did not know yet what she was going to do in the core systems. But watching her now, he thought that whatever it was, it would matter. It would be remembered. For better or worse, humanity was no longer waiting. The fleet moved deeper into Vrethkai space. Behind them, the ruins of 900 destroyed warships drifted in the dark, the best defense the Dominion had ever built. It had not been enough. The hollow-point charges were armed. 41 units, each one locked to a target star, each one waiting for a single authorization code. The drones carrying them sat in their bays in the lower holds of the Endurance, quiet and precise and patient. They did not know what they were. They were machines. The knowing was entirely Sarah's problem. She had not slept in 31 hours. The human fleet sat at the edge of the Vrethkai core systems, 13 worlds, dozens of inhabited moons, billions of civilians who had been born into the Dominion the way anyone was born into any civilization. They had not chosen its doctrine. They had not signed off on the 7 clearances. Most of them had probably never thought about humans at all. They grew food and raised families and went to work and existed the same way people did everywhere, in the ordinary texture of daily life. Solano came to Sarah's quarters in the middle of the night cycle and said what she had come to say. "Deploy them," she said. "All of them. End it permanently." Sarah did not respond immediately. Solano pressed. "If we leave this civilization intact, we leave the infrastructure of the doctrine intact. New leaders will come. New expansion programs. They will look at humanity as a species that came close but did not finish the job. We will be on the list again in 50 years. Maybe less." "I know," Sarah said. "Then you know what the answer is." "I know what the logical answer is," Sarah said. "That's not the same thing." Solano left. She did not slam the door. She closed it quietly, which was somehow worse. Tomas came next. He did not ask for anything. He sat down across from Sarah and put his recorder on the table between them, face down, not recording. Off the record, in whatever way anything could be off the record on a ship carrying 41 sun killers. "I was in an exam when they burned Calder's Rest," he said. "Interstellar media ethics. I got the notification on my communicator. I failed the exam because I spent the last hour of it reading casualty estimates." He paused. "I've been angry since that day. I came on this ship because I wanted the galaxy to see what happened to us. I still want that. But I don't want the galaxy to see us do the same thing and call it justice." Sarah looked at him. "You think that's what I'm planning?" "I think it's what you're being pushed toward." "It is," she said. He waited. "Go back to your cabin," she said. "Give me 6 hours." He picked up his recorder and left. Counselor Holt reached her by relay broadcast from Earth 2 hours later. His face on the screen was pale and tight. He had clearly not slept either. "Sarah, think about what you are holding. What you actually are, right now, in this moment. You are one authorization code away from committing an act that will define humanity forever. Not as survivors. Not as avengers. As exterminators. Is that the word you want history to use?" "No," she said. "Then. But I need you to understand something, David." She used his first name deliberately. "The Vrethkai High Dominion has not surrendered. Their fleet is destroyed and their command is gone. But their government is intact and their doctrine is unchanged. If I pull this fleet back without a permanent answer, we are running a countdown, not ending a war. Then occupy them. Enforce disarmament. Monitor. For how long? A generation? 2. With what guarantee? They categorized 4 billion humans as administrative waste. That is not a policy position you fix with inspections. Holt was silent. Sarah made her decision in that silence. She had actually made it earlier, but the silence confirmed it. She did not authorize the hollow point deployment against the populated systems. She chose 3 uninhabited star systems at the outer edge of Vrethkai space. Empty systems, surveyed and confirmed, nothing living within the kill radius. She authorized those 3. She watched from the command deck as the drones launched and traveled and detonated. 3 stars died. Slowly, then all at once. They expanded into blazing orange giants, then collapsed in cascades of light and heat that traveled outward across the sector. Every telescope in that region of the galaxy caught it. Every civilization watching saw 3 suns go dark, and then go bright, and then cease to be suns. The Vrethkai core worlds shook with the light of it. Sarah sent the broadcast to the High Dominion herself. This is what we built. These were not your stars. We chose them empty because we chose them empty. That was a choice. Remember it. The next time your doctrine looks at any living species and writes the word infestation, remember that the infestation spared you. Remember what it cost us to do that. And understand that we will not be filed as a clearance event. Ever. Again. The Vrethkai High Dominion sent their unconditional surrender 40 minutes later. Sarah read it. Set it down. Walked to the observation window and looked out at the place where 3 stars used to be. 3 new expanding clouds of superheated gas, drifting silently outward into the dark. Tomas found her there an hour later. He had his recorder running. She let him. 6 months later, the ground on Calder's Rest was still glass. It would be glass for a long time. Centuries, maybe. The heat had gone too deep, fused the soil too thoroughly for any quick recovery. The restoration teams had done their surveys and delivered their reports with careful, clinical language, long-term ecological remediation, multi-generational timeline. Words that meant, not in your lifetime, not in your children's lifetime, but someday. Sarah walked the site alone. It was early morning. The sky was still that orange-ash color, though lighter now than it had been on her first visit. In the distance, the memorial was taking shape, a vast open structure of pale stone, low to the ground, spreading outward from the center of the old capital in a wide ring. No towers, no monuments pointing upward at the sky, just a circle, open to the air, with the names being carved into the inner walls by teams who worked in shifts around the clock. For 300 million names was a lot of carving. She had read the Calder Accords before flying out here. The formal documents were long and heavily worded, but their meaning was simple. The Vrethkai Dominion was dissolved. A coalition administration had replaced it, under galactic oversight. Human inspection teams had access to every former Vrethkai military installation for the next 100 years. The expansion doctrine had been struck from every official record and declared a crime under the newly established Galactic Non-Extinction Pact. 7 other civilizations had come forward within weeks of the surrender. Small species, quiet species, species that had been managed or reduced or outright removed over the past 2 centuries of Vrethkai expansion. They had records. They had survivor testimony. They had, in some cases, only a few thousand people left. The Calder Accords created a separate process for each of them: reparations, land restoration, recognition. Tomas Rees' broadcasts had reached every corner of the known galaxy. The footage of the battle, the footage of Sarah reading the surrender, the footage of 3 stars dying in the dark, it had changed the conversation. Not just about the war. About what the galaxy permitted to happen quietly, in the margins, filed under administrative language, and never examined. He had won 3 separate journalism awards already. He had not attended any of the ceremonies. He was still working. Solano came to find Sarah near midday. She had recovered from the burn on her arm. She wore the scar without covering it, which Sarah had expected. They stood together on the glass ground and did not speak for a long time. That was also expected. Some things did not need language. "You're staying for the ceremony?" Solano asked, eventually. "Yes." "And after?" Sarah looked toward the memorial. "I've been asked to lead the Permanent Inspection Commission for the Vrethkai installations." Solano turned to look at her. "That's not a military post." "No," Sarah agreed. "It's not." They stood in silence again. A wind came through, carrying fine white dust across the glass surface. Ash still, probably, or minerals from the fused ground itself. It settled against their boots and blew on. A message arrived from Ambassador Soth that afternoon, relayed through 3 communication networks to reach the restricted zone above Calder's Rest. Sarah read it sitting on a low piece of stone near the memorial's eastern edge. The Polhari Compact sent it with their full diplomatic seal. It read, in part, "We confess that we feared you before this war. We came to your rally point expecting to witness the birth of something dangerous. What we witnessed instead was more difficult to categorize. You had the capacity for total destruction and you demonstrated it. And then you chose restraint, not because you lacked the will, but because you decided what kind of species you intended to be. We do not have a word in our language for a civilization that is simultaneously the most dangerous thing in this region of space, and the reason 7 other peoples are still alive. We will need to make one." Sarah folded the message and put it in her jacket pocket. The ceremony at the memorial that evening was simple. No speeches. A single bell, rung once for each of the 7 worlds. 7 long tones, spaced out across the cooling air of Calder's Rest, fading slowly into the distance. Thousands of people stood in silence. Recovery workers, soldiers, officials, families who had lost everything. Families who had lost almost everything and were learning what almost meant. When the last tone finished, Sarah looked down at the ground near her feet. A green shoot was growing up through a crack in the glass. Small, pale, barely there. Something in the soil beneath the fused surface, some seed buried deep enough to survive, had found the crack and pushed through it. It was the most ordinary thing she had seen in 6 months. She crouched down and looked at it for a long time. She did not pick it up or photograph it. She just looked. Then she stood and walked back toward the shuttle and left it to grow. Humanity had burned nothing it was not forced to burn. And when the fire was done, they were the ones who came back to watch the green return.